The galaxy had been at peace for a very long time. Not true peace, of course. There were always small wars, border fights, and secret deals made in dark corners of space. But the great powers had learned to share. They had learned that total war meant total death. So they watched each other, they traded, and they kept their weapons ready but quiet. The Velith Dominion controlled most of the trade routes. They were tall beings with silver scales and cold eyes. They believed they were the most civilized species in the galaxy, and they made sure everyone knew it. The Kreth hegemony had the largest military. They were massive creatures, built like mountains, with 4 arms and skin like stone. They respected only strength. The Sithri Collective watched everything. No one knew what they truly looked like. They hid behind machines and sensors that spread across thousands of star systems. They saw all and said little. For 12,000 years, these 3 powers and hundreds of smaller species had maintained order. The Galactic Concordat was their agreement, their promise to keep the peace. And it worked mostly because everyone feared what would happen if it failed. Then the Sithri detected something strange. It came from a small yellow star on the edge of the galaxy, a quiet corner of space that no one cared about. The Sithri had marked this system 300 years ago. They had found a young species there, still learning to split atoms and dream of space. The collective had noted them in their records and moved on. Such species were common. Most destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. The rest were easily controlled. But now, signals were coming from that system. Strong signals. Electromagnetic waves that pushed out into space like a scream. The species called themselves human. Ambassador Kethferl of the Velith Dominion was chosen to make first contact. He was old, experienced, and very confident. He had welcomed dozens of young species into the Concordat. It was always the same. They were amazed by the technology, grateful for the protection, eager to serve their betters. Kethferl expected nothing different from these humans. His diplomatic fleet was impressive. 30 ships, each one beautiful in design. They were made of flowing metals and glowing energy shields. They could cross the galaxy in days. They carried enough firepower to burn a planet, but they kept their weapons powered down. This was a peaceful mission. After all, the fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system. Kethferl stood on his bridge and watched the scanners. He expected to find primitive satellites, maybe a few crude ships struggling between planets. He expected to feel pity for these young creatures. He did not expect what he found. A single ship waited for them. It sat in the darkness of space like a guard dog at a gate. It was not beautiful. It was not graceful. It looked like someone had taken a block of metal and carved it with angry hands. The hull was thick and heavy. The design was simple and brutal. Everything about it spoke of function over form. Kethferl's tactical officer, a young female named Sarah, ran her scans. Then she ran them again. Her scales went pale. "Ambassador," she said, her voice tight, "you need to see this." The data appeared on the main screen. The human ship was covered in weapons. Kinetic cannons that fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Missiles tipped with nuclear warheads. Energy beams that burned hot enough to cut through steel. The ship had more weapons than armor. More guns than engines. It was not designed for exploration. It was not designed for diplomacy. It was designed to kill. "They built a warship," Syra whispered. "Their first interstellar vessel, and they built a warship." Kethferl felt something cold move through his chest. In all his years, in all his first contacts, he had never seen this. Young species built exploration ships. They built science vessels. They built transports to carry their hopeful diplomats to the stars. They did not build weapons of war as their first step into the galaxy. What kind of species did that? He thought of the Concordat's history. He thought of the wars that had shaped the galaxy. The Kreth had been warriors once, savage and brutal. The Veleth had conquered and enslaved before learning the value of trade. Even the mysterious Sithari had dark chapters in their past. But all of them had grown beyond their violent youth. All of them had learned. These humans had not even met another species yet. They had no enemies among the stars. No one had threatened them. No one had attacked their world. And yet, they had built a ship meant for battle. "Open a channel," Kethfarl said. His voice was calm, but his mind was racing. Standard greeting protocol. The screen flickered. A face appeared. It was soft compared to Veleth scales or Krethstone. Smooth skin the color of dark wood. Two eyes that held no fear. The human was female, dressed in a simple uniform. She sat in a chair on her bridge, surrounded by her crew. They all watched the screen with steady gazes. "I am Ambassador Kethfarl of the Veleth Dominion," he said. "On behalf of the Galactic Concordat, I welcome you to the community of star-faring species." The human female smiled. It was a strange expression. It showed teeth. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Federation ship Defiance," she said. "On behalf of Earth, I suggest you state your intentions clearly. No gratitude. No wonder. No fear. Just a question and a warning wrapped in polite words." Kethfarl looked at the crude warship on his screen. He looked at the woman who commanded it. And for the first time in centuries, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Uncertainty. The galaxy was about to change. He could feel it in his bones. These humans were not like the others. They were not going to bow. They were not going to serve. They were going to be a problem. Captain Elena Vasquez watched the alien ambassador on her screen. He was trying to hide his surprise, but she could see it in the way his scales shifted color. He had expected something else. Something weaker. Something easier. He had not expected the defiance. She let the silence stretch for a moment, then spoke again. "Ambassador, we received your transmission codes 3 days ago. We know you come in peace, but you will understand that we prefer to be careful." The alien nodded slowly. "Of course, Captain. Caution is wise. Perhaps we could meet aboard my vessel? I would be honored to show you the wonders of galactic civilization." Elena almost smiled. The invitation was a test. "Come to my ship, where I am strong and you are weak. Let me show you how small you are." "Thank you," she said. "But I think neutral ground would be better. There is a moon in this system. No atmosphere, but solid ground. We can both land there." The ambassador's eyes narrowed slightly. He was not used to being refused. But he nodded again. "Very well. I will bring a small party. Shall we say 6 hours?" 6 hours, Elena agreed. She cut the transmission. Her first officer, Commander James Alconkle, stepped up beside her. He was a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands. He had served with Elena for 10 years. "He thinks we're primitives," James said quietly. "He does," Elena agreed. "Let him." She turned and looked at her bridge crew. 12 humans, each one trained for years. Each one ready to die for their ship, their planet, their species. They watched her with trust in their eyes. Elena walked to the main viewport and stared at the alien fleet. 30 ships. Beautiful and deadly. She knew the Defiance could not defeat them all. Maybe 1 or 2, if they were lucky. Maybe 3 if they were willing to die in the attempt. But that was not the point. The point was to show that humanity would fight. That they would never be easy prey. She thought about how they had come to this moment. 50 years ago, Earth had detected the first alien signals. Faint whispers from distant stars. Proof that humanity was not alone. The news had changed everything. Old enemies made peace. Old borders fell away. The United Terran Federation was born from the ashes of 100 nations. But the old fears did not die. They never did. Humanity's history was written in blood. They had fought each other since the beginning. Tribes against tribes. Nations against nations. Wars that killed millions. Weapons that could end all life on Earth. They had come close to destroying themselves more than once. And through it all, one lesson had been burned into their bones. The universe did not care about them. It did not protect the weak. It did not reward the kind. Survival belonged to those who fought for it. So when the Federation asked its scientists to build the first interstellar ship, the answer was clear. They would build a ship that could fight. They would build a ship that could survive. They would build the Defiance. Some had argued against it. They said humanity should send a message of peace. They said first contact should be hopeful, not threatening. They said the aliens might be friendly, but others remembered history. They remembered how explorers from powerful nations had treated weaker peoples. They remembered slavery and conquest and genocide. They remembered that hope without strength was just another word for surrender. The Defiance was a compromise. A warship with a diplomatic mission. An iron fist inside a velvet glove. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Elena understood this better than most. Her grandmother had grown up in a war zone. Her father had been a soldier. She herself had fought in the last great conflict on Earth, before the Federation brought peace. She knew what violence looked like. She knew what it cost. She did not want war with these aliens. She wanted peace and trade and cooperation. She wanted humanity to join the galactic community as equals, but she would not beg for it. She would not kneel. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chun from the sensor station. "The alien ships are scanning us." "Let them look," Elena said. "They will see what we want them to see." The Defiance had been designed with this moment in mind. Its weapons were visible, obvious, impossible to miss. Its armor was thick and heavy. It looked exactly like what it was, a ship built by a species they expected to fight. But there were other things hidden beneath the surface. Better sensors than the aliens expected. Faster engines than they could see. And secrets that Elena hoped they would never need to use. She returned to her chair and sat down. In 6 hours, she would meet the first alien ambassador in human history. She would shake his hand or whatever he had instead of hands. She would smile and speak polite words. And she would make sure he understood. One simple truth. Humanity was not afraid. They had crawled out of the mud on a violent world. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars. They had split the atom and walked on the moon and reached for the stars. They had done all this alone with no help from anyone. They would not bow to these strangers. They would not accept the role of children in an adult galaxy. They would earn their place, or they would die trying. Elena looked at the alien fleet one more time. 30 ships. Thousands of years of civilization behind them. She smiled. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The meeting on the moon did not go well. Ambassador Kethferl was polite. He smiled with his thin lips and spoke with a gentle voice. But his words carried poison. He offered humanity protection under Velth guidance. He suggested that Earth would benefit from experienced leadership. He talked about the dangers of the galaxy and how young species often made terrible mistakes. Captain Vasquez listened carefully. She understood what he was really saying. Become our servants or face the consequences. She refused, of course. Politely, firmly. She said humanity was grateful for the offer, but preferred to find its own path. She said they hoped for friendship and trade, not protection and control. Kethvarl's scales darkened. He was not used to being told no. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Other species sent observers. The Krathegemini had ships waiting at the edge of the system, watching everything. The Scythery Collective recorded every word, every gesture, every heartbeat. The whole galaxy was paying attention. On the third day, everything changed. 5 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the outer planets. They were Kreth vessels, big and heavy, with weapons that glowed red. They did not respond to hails. They did not identify themselves. They simply began moving toward Earth's outer colonies, the small stations where humans mined asteroids and studied the distant planets. Ambassador Kethferl expressed shock and concern. He said these must be pirates, unconnected to the hegemony. He offered to send his fleet to help. Elena knew the truth. This was a test. The Kreth wanted to see what humanity would do when faced with real danger. Would they hide behind Veleth protection? Would they beg for help? Would they show weakness? She gave her answer by walking out of the meeting. 10 minutes later, the Defiance broke orbit and headed for the outer system. Alone. Captain, Commander Akanko said quietly, 5 Kreth cruisers. We cannot win this fight. I know, Elena replied, but we can make them bleed. The Defiance was fast for its size. Its engines had been built by engineers who knew every trick of physics. The ship crossed the system in hours, pushing its crew hard against their seats. They ate and slept in shifts. They checked their weapons again and again. Elena watched the enemy ships grow larger on her screens. They were beautiful in a brutal way. Each one was 3 times the size of the Defiance. Their hulls were thick with armor. Their shields glowed with energy that could stop most weapons. Most weapons. Not all. All hands, Elena said over the ship speakers. Battle stations. This is not a drill. The crew moved with practiced speed. Gun crews loaded their weapons. Engineers pushed the engines harder. Medical teams prepared for the wounded that would surely come. The Kreth ships saw them coming. They spread out into an attack formation. Their weapons began to charge. They expected the human ship to slow down, to circle, to probe their defenses from a safe distance. Elena did not slow down. She accelerated. All weapons, she ordered. Fire at will. The Defiance screamed into the Kreth formation like a bullet aimed at a nest of snakes. The kinetic cannons roared first, throwing chunks of tungsten at speeds that made them glow white-hot. The Kreth shields flickered and sparked as the metal tore into them. Energy shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They were not designed to stop lumps of metal moving at a fraction of light speed. The first Kreth cruiser took a dozen hits in 3 seconds. Its shields failed in patches. Its hull cracked open. Then the nuclear missiles arrived, and the ship became a ball of fire. But the Kreth were not helpless. They fired back with everything they had. Plasma bolts slammed into the Defiance. Energy beams cut across its hull. The ship shook like a toy in an angry child's hand. Elena gripped her chair and watched the damage. Reports flood across her screen. Hull breaches on 3 decks. Fires in the engine room. 20 crew members dead in the first minute. She did not order a retreat. The Defiance twisted and rolled, its crude armor taking hits that would have destroyed a lighter ship. It kept firing, kept pushing deeper into the enemy formation. A second Kreth cruiser exploded as missiles found its reactor. A third lost its engines to kinetic fire and began to drift. The remaining 2 Kreth ships tried to pull back. They had expected an easy kill. They had not expected a human captain to fly directly into their guns. They had not expected the humans to fight like they did not care about dying. The Defiance chased them. Its hull was broken in a dozen places. Its crew was bleeding and burning. But its weapons still worked, and Elena was not finished. The 4th Kreth cruiser died trying to escape. The 5th managed to jump away, its faster-than-light drive screaming as it fled. But not before every sensor in the system recorded its running. Elena slumped in her chair. The Defiance was barely holding together. Her crew was exhausted and wounded. But they had one. No, more than one. They had sent a message that the entire galaxy would hear. Humanity did not surrender. Humanity did not beg. When threatened, humanity fought with everything it had. Even if victory seemed impossible, the recordings of the battle spread across the galaxy in hours. Species that had never heard of Earth watched a single crude warship tear through 5 Kreth cruisers. They watched humans die and keep fighting. They watched a captain who flew into certain death and somehow survived, and they began to understand something important. These new creatures were not like the others. They were not soft. They were not afraid. They had crawled out of some terrible world that had taught them only one lesson. Survival was not given. It was taken. The galaxy watched, and the galaxy remembered. Deep in the heart of the galaxy, the Scythery Collective watched everything. Their sensors spread across 1,000 star systems. Their machines recorded every signal, every transmission, every whisper in the void. They had been watching for so long that most species had forgotten they were there. The Scythery preferred it that way. Knowledge was power, and they had more knowledge than anyone. Now they focused all their attention on a single recording. The battle in the Sol system. They watched it 712 times. Elder Veth was the oldest of the collective's ruling council. She had lived for 3,000 years. She had watched empires rise and fall. She had seen species destroy themselves and others reach for greatness. Very little surprised her anymore. The humans surprised her. "Analysis," she said to the council. Her voice was soft, carried by machines to every member across a dozen worlds. A younger Scythery spoke. His name was Kale. The human ship was inferior in every way. Slower engines, weaker shields, cruder weapons. By all logic, it should have been destroyed in the first minute, but it was not, Elder Veth said. No, the humans did something we have not seen in millennia. They charged directly into the enemy formation. They accepted damage that should have killed them. They kept fighting even when escape was possible. Elder Veth nodded slowly. They fought like they had nothing to lose. Worse than that, Kale said. They fought like they expected to die and wanted to take their enemies with them. The council was silent for a long moment. They all understood what this meant. The galaxy had seen warriors before. The Kreth were warriors. Dozens of species had built their cultures around combat and honor. But they all fought to win. They all wanted to survive. The humans seemed different. They fought like cornered animals, like creatures that had faced death so many times that it no longer frightened them. Elder Veth ordered a deeper investigation. The collective turned its vast resources to studying humanity. They collected every piece of information they could find. Broadcasts, historical records, cultural artifacts. They studied human biology and psychology. They mapped human history from its earliest days. What they found disturbed them deeply. Earth was a death world. Not officially, of course. The galaxy had categories for dangerous planets, and Earth did not quite fit the worst classifications. But it was close. The gravity was high. The climate was unstable. The planet had suffered multiple extinction events. The life forms that evolved there were forced to compete in brutal conditions, and the humans were the winners of that competition. They were persistence predators. Their bodies were designed to keep going when other creatures collapsed. They could survive injuries that would kill most species. They healed faster than they should. They adapted to almost any environment. And they never, ever gave up. But it was their history that truly frightened the Scythery. Humans have been at war with each other for their entire existence. They had fought over land, resources, ideas, and religions. They had invented weapons of terrible power. They had come within minutes of destroying their own world. Not once, but several times, and yet they had survived. Somehow, against all logic, they had pulled back from the edge each time. They had learned and grown and reached for the stars. The collective found a concept in human culture that had no translation in most galactic languages. The humans called it spite. It meant doing something not because it would help you, but because it would hurt your enemy. It meant choosing mutual destruction over surrender. Elder Veth read the reports and felt something she had not felt in centuries. Fear. Recommendation. She said to the council. Kale spoke carefully. Do not threaten them. Do not give them a reason to fight. The humans have a long memory. They hold grudges for generations. They will wait centuries for revenge if they must. And if we must fight them someday, then we must destroy them completely on the first strike with no survivors. Because if even one human escapes, they will rebuild. They will remember. And they will come back. The Sithri Collective issued a quiet warning to every species in the Concordat. It was not a formal announcement. It was a whisper passed from ambassador to trader to spy. But the message was clear. Leave the humans alone. The Veloth Dominion received the warning and understood. Ambassador Kethvarl withdrew his fleet from the Sol system. He sent polite messages about respecting human sovereignty. He'd pretended the whole thing had been a misunderstanding. The Kreth hegemony was harder to convince. They were proud warriors who did not like running from a fight. But their leaders were not stupid. They had seen the recordings. They had counted their dead ships. They knew what it meant when a species fought like the humans did. The hegemony officially declared that the raiders had been criminals acting without orders. They sent gifts to Earth, advanced technology, star charts, trade agreements with no conditions attached. They pulled their border back 50 light years from human space. Other species followed. The Veloth reduced their patrols near Sol. The Kreth kept their warships far away. Even the Sithri stopped sending spy drones. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy stepped back, and something strange happened. The constant small wars stopped. The border conflicts ended. The secret deals and quiet assassinations became rare. The galaxy, for the first time in thousands of years, went truly quiet. That no one said it openly, but everyone knew the reason. Everyone was afraid of the humans, not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they were unpredictable, because they did not follow the rules, because they might do anything if pushed too hard. The galaxy held its breath and watched the small yellow star on the rim dot, waiting to see what the humans would do next. 10 years passed. The TFS Defiance sat in a museum now. It orbited Earth in a slow, peaceful circle, its wounds patched but still visible. Visitors came from across the solar system to see it. They walked through its scarred corridors and touched its battered hull. They read the names of the 43 crew members who had died in the Battle of Sol's Edge. The ship had become a symbol, a reminder of the day humanity announced itself to the galaxy. School children learned about Captain Vasquez and her desperate charge. Artists painted the moment when the Defiance flew into the Kreth formation. Songs were written about the crew who chose to fight instead of run, but the symbol was no longer needed. Humanity had built other ships, hundreds of them, better, faster, stronger than the Defiance had ever been. The Terran Navy patrolled human space with quiet confidence. They had not fired a shot in anger since the Battle of Sol's Edge. They had not needed to. Elena Vasquez was no longer a captain. She had been promoted, then promoted again, then finally pushed into a role she had never wanted. Ambassador. The same title that Kethvarl had held when he first came to Saldon. Now she stood in the place that no human had ever stood before. The great hall of the Galactic CONCORDAT. It was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed near the top. Thousands of seats spread out in circles around a central platform. Each seat held a representative from a different species. Some were tall and thin. Others were short and wide. Some floated in special chambers filled with strange gases. Others wore machines that helped them survive in the standard atmosphere. All of them watched Elena, and she walked to the central platform. She was older now. Gray touched her dark hair. Lines marked her face. But her eyes were the same, steady, unafraid. She wore a simple uniform, not the fancy robes that most ambassadors preferred. She wanted them to remember what she was: a soldier, a survivor, a human. The hall fell silent as she reached the platform. Translators hummed in 1,000 different frequencies, ready to carry her words to every ear. Elena looked out at the assembled species. She saw fear in many eyes, curiosity in others. A few showed respect. A few showed hate. She had expected all of this. 10 years ago, she began, a single human ship met your ambassadors at the edge of our system. Many of you wondered what kind of species would build a warship as their first step into the stars. Many of you decided we were dangerous, primitive, violent. She paused, letting the words settle. You were not entirely wrong. A murmur rippled through the hall. Elena raised her hand, and silence returned. Humanity has a violent history. We fought each other for thousands of years. We invented weapons that could destroy our own world. We came close to extinction more times than we like to remember. We are not proud of all that we have done. She took a breath. But we survived. We always survived. And we learned something from all that suffering. We learned that the universe does not care about us. It does not protect the weak or reward the kind. The universe is cold and dark and full of dangers. If you want to live, you must fight for it. Her voice hardened. That is why we built the Defiance. Not because we wanted war. Not because we hate strangers. We built it because we knew, in our bones, that we could not trust our survival to anyone else. We had to be ready to fight from the very first moment. She looked at the crest section of the hall. The massive warriors sat in uncomfortable silence. You sent ships to test us. You wanted to see if we were easy prey. We showed you our answer. The Velith ambassador shifted in his seat. Elena turned to face him. You offered us protection in exchange for obedience. You expected us to be grateful for the chance to serve. We refused. She swept her gaze across the entire hall. And now you are afraid of us. I can see it in your eyes. You think we are monsters. You think we will burn across the galaxy like a fire, destroying everything in our path. Elena shook her head slowly. You are wrong. The hall was completely silent now. Every being watched her with total attention. Humans are violent, yes, but we are also more than that. We are artists who paint beauty on cave walls and cathedral ceilings. We are poets who find meaning in suffering. We are healers who spend their lives saving others. We are dreamers who look at the stars and imagine better worlds. Her voice softened. We did not survive by being the strongest or the fastest. We survived by being everything. Warriors when we needed to fight. Builders when we needed to create. Friends when we needed each other. We are all of these things because we had to be. She spread her hands. We did not come to the stars to conquer. We came to belong. We want to trade with you. Learn from you. Share what we know. We want to be part of this galactic community, not as servants or masters, but as equals. She straightened her shoulders. But we will not beg for acceptance. We will not pretend to be less than we are. And if anyone threatens our home, our people, or our future, her eyes swept the hall one final time. Her voice carried the weight of all human history. We will remind you why the galaxy went quiet. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, slowly, a single representative began to make a sound. It was the Kreth ambassador, slamming his 4 fists against his chest in the warrior salute. Others joined him. The Velith touched their scales in respect. The Scytheries machines flickered in acknowledgement that it was not applause. It was not celebration. It was something more important. It was recognition. Elena stood on the platform and watched as species that had ruled the stars for millennia accepted humanity as their equal. Not because they loved humans, not because they trusted them, but because they understood. Some species reached the stars and asked for permission to exist. Humanity had reached the stars and demanded it. And the galaxy, for all its ancient wisdom, had no answer for that kind of strength. Elena thought of the Defiance, sitting quiet in its museum orbit. She thought of the crew who had died so that this moment could happen. She thought of all the generations of humans who had fought and suffered and dreamed. They had made it. Against all odds, against a hostile universe, against their own worst nature, humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.